Russia is asking Interpol to arrest an American-born Kremlin critic for the seventh time. Bill Browder was once the biggest foreign money manager in Moscow, but he has become a vocal critic to Russian President Vladimir Putin and his regime. Russia has accused the London-based businessman of a series of crimes, including tax evasion and for organizing a transnational criminal group. Browder is also leading a campaign to punish Russian officials for the 2009 death of his lawyer. And Bill joins us now from London. Welcome, Bill. Thank you so much for being with us. Can you first explain why the Russian government is trying so hard to have you arrested? This is their seventh attempt.
Well, so in 2009, my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, was murdered in a Russian prison after torture for 358 days because he had exposed a major Russian government corruption scheme. And for the last 9 years, I've been on a campaign to get justice for Sergei Magnitsky, which has culminated in something called the Magnitsky Act, passed by the U.S. in 2012 and by 5 other countries since then. And the Magnitsky Act imposes visa sanctions and asset freezes on people high up in the Putin regime. And because Putin and his regime are kleptocrats, they keep a lot of their assets offshore. And Putin has made it a personal vendetta to try to go after me in any way he can. And the seventh request to Interpol is an example of that. The previous 6 requests were rejected by Interpol as being politically motivated and illegitimate.
And so why do you think it is so important to be outspoken in your criticism of the Kremlin, despite the potential danger to yourself? I mean, you've said you believe your life is in danger.
My life is indeed in danger, but I have a duty to Sergei Magnitsky, my lawyer, who was murdered in my service, to go after the people that killed him and make sure they face justice. And for me to back down or to be intimidated by these actions of the Putin regime would be a great betrayal of his memory, and I won't do that.
Now, as you mentioned, Interpol has declined Russia's request for your arrest 6 times before this. The commission is expected to begin reviewing the latest request on Monday. And you wrote on Twitter, quote, "Something needs to be done, fixed at Interpol if dictators can go back unlimited times to chase their enemies with bogus warrants." So what would you like to see done to reform this aspect of the international organization?
Well, basically, the rules say that you're not supposed to abuse the system as a member of Interpol for Russia or for anyone else, and the rules have sanctions in them. So it's possible for Interpol to punish Russia, to suspend them for some period of time or some other punishment. But at the moment, Interpol just allows Putin to just keep on pressing the button time and time again. And it's not just me that's suffering from this type of abuse. There's plenty of other dictators around the world doing the same thing. And Interpol is supposed to be a crime-fighting organization, not an organization used by corrupt dictators to go after their enemies.
Now, as you know, WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange has just been arrested at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. He's facing extradition charges in the U.S. A Kremlin spokesperson said that Moscow hopes Assange's rights will not be violated. So what's your view on all of this?
Well, first of all, Julian Assange, at some early point in his career, had my sympathy when he was exposing things in the public interest. But it became clear that he wasn't exposing things in the public interest. After that, he was exposing things in the Russian government's interests, and which is why the Russian government is speaking up in his defense. And I think it's awfully hypocritical of the Russian government to be talking about Julian Assange's rights when they murdered my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, in a Russian jail.
Right. All right. Let's turn now, if you will, to the Mueller report. So according to Attorney General William Barr's summary of the report, there was no collusion between President Trump and Russia. What will you be looking for in the entire report?
Well, for me, the most interesting part of the report is the part about what Russia actually did to influence the outcome of the U.S. political process. We know that Russia intervened. We know that Putin intervened. And I'd like to see those details because I think those details should, in a certain way, educate us about what needs to be done in the future to protect the U.S. political system and to protect other political systems from future activities by the Russians.
So tell us a little bit about the current situation that you find yourself in. Of course, you were born in the U.S., but now hold British citizenship. Did you revoke your U.S. citizenship?
So I moved to Britain about 30 years ago. I became British 20 years ago. When I naturalized, I relinquished my U.S. citizenship. I've been I'm a permanent resident and citizen of Britain at this point for the last 20 years.
Okay, so you were a topic during last year's Helsinki summit between Trump and Putin. As I'm sure you're aware, the Russian leader asked the U.S. to hand you over in exchange for 12 Russian intelligence officers accused of hacking the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. The White House turned down that offer. But what do you make of President Trump's relationship with President Putin?
Well, it was a very strange series of days when that was happening. So, as you mentioned, Putin said, I want Bill Browder and 11 other people who had worked with me from the U.S. government in passing the Magnitsky Act. And Trump said, I think that's a brilliant idea. And Trump did eventually turn it down, but it took him 4 days to turn it down, which is unbelievable for me and the other 11 who were as part of that deal. And it was very strange that why would the president of the United States be willing to hand anybody over to Vladimir Putin, particularly people that Putin wants to kill?
So do you feel more protected then by the British government than you would have been by the American government if you were still a citizen?
Well, I feel perfectly protected by the U.S. legal system. I feel totally comfortable traveling to the United States because the United States is a country with the rule of law, as is the same thing in the United Kingdom. But I do find it offensive that the president was willing to, at least for 4 days, enter into this horrifying and disgusting deal with Vladimir Putin.
All right, Bill Browder, we really thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you.